Now, was that on your Walkman?
No.
Okay.
No.
No. Now, along with being a featured writer at American Songwriter magazine that everyone should check out, Jim Beviglia is the author of the Counting Down series about the 100 finest songs. So he's got Counting Down Bob Dylan, Counting Down Nancy Your Dude, Bruce Springsteen.
Well, there you go.
Okay, Counting Down the Rolling Stones and Counting Down the Beatles. Like, he did the four greats. Like, well, yeah, I want him to do more. I've got more. I got a list from him. All were published by Rowman and Littlefield, and his new book is out, and he's joining us here on Big Blend Radio today on our Champagne Sunday show to talk about his latest book. And I'm telling you, it's a total geek out for all of us who are into the 80s. And some of the songs I didn't realize were in the 80s. Like, it's the coolest thing. It's called Playing Back the 80s, a decade of unstoppable hits. And he goes behind the scenes to explore the making of over 60 of the decade's greatest hits. And again, published by Rowan and Littlefield, of course, again, Amazon, all those places, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble. But also go check out his website, his blog. Jim's blog is countdownkid.wordpress.com. It's super cool. And he's also on Twitter. And welcome, Jim. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me today.
Hey, we're excited about this. Okay, so I'm going to tell you. So Nancy and I are here,
boy.
like, we geeked
I
out.
knew you were going to tell.
We geeked out on all the songs, and I've been geeking out on the book, and I do geek out on this kind of stuff. I'm like a nerd about it, but not like a total nerd. Like you win that case, okay? No, Jim's got it on this for sure. But Nikki Chris is our co-host today, our special guest co-host, singer-songwriter. She's got a new album out called Heartbeat. And she geeks out on the 80s too, so we're going to have a true geek out.
So you should tell him what we did.
I think I might outgeek you all because I've been obsessed about this music really since I heard it, and it hasn't really ever left my life since then. And I'm so glad that I had the chance to write about it and to talk to all these great artists.
Oh, I know. And dude, you just interviewed Mark Knopfler, okay? Like, seriously, can I just say that I'm completely jealous? Like, really?
That was a get. Yeah, we went back and forth, because he's not a guy who likes to sing his own praises a lot, but he had a new album out and wanted to promote it, so that was really cool for me too because he's one of my kind of musical idols.
Oh man, he is. Well, growing up in the 80s, like that's what was so interesting about going through your book is like I thought this it balanced out some things for me, like between what was in the 70s and what was early 90s. So there was some.
It's confusing because we were in another part of the world.
During the 80s, I grew up in Kenya, England, and South Africa in the 80s for those three countries in one decade.
Okay.
Yeah, things hit there later.
So the music, it was different.
Sometimes.
The music was different because you got the British distribution.
Right.
More than the, so the American distribution. But it was a fun era for sure. Nancy and I sat down the other night.
This is crazy.
We got ourselves a nice bottle of wine or two, to be honest.
Yeah.
And we decided we're going to go through all 60-plus songs in your book.
Yep.
And we did a list on my personal Facebook page. Nikki, you saw that was a partial list. I posted other ones to groups so people didn't think I was completely nuts. And we went through all these songs because some we knew we just wanted to, go back to, and some I didn't really know the names. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. And as soon as you play it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. But I want to do a champagne toast to YouTube because it's so cool to be able to. We always like to see live videos, and it's so cool to see concerts that you didn't get a chance to see as a kid. But every song had a video. Or at least like an MTV kind of video, except for Bob Seger. And so, of course, I go running to your book, and I found out Bob Seger, like that song, really didn't really have a video like everybody else's when we were playing that. And I had never actually, and I love Bob Seger, but I had never heard this song. You know which one I'm talking about?
Shame on the Moon.
Shame on the Moon.
I do. Yeah. Amazing that it did do as well as it did because not only didn't it have a video, but it's not your typical, it's not up-tempo, it doesn't really grab you with a big hook or anything like that, and this cool kind of, weird little song made it all the way to number 2 on the charts, as I recall when I wrote it. I think it kept off by Michael Jackson, so you can imagine how different these songs were kind of competing in the charts.
Wow.
And I talked to Rodney Crowell for the book, who was a famous songwriter, a performer in his own right, and he had written this song and performed it on his own. Didn't think too much of it, and then Bob Seger had heard it and took it and did his own version, and it becomes this incredible hit. So that was one of the more surprising, I think, hit songs in the book and in the whole decade.
And okay,
I like it.
How did you even narrow down to 60 and why 60? How did you do that?
Well,
I mean,
when I started the project, I originally thought, well, I didn't know how many interviews I was going to get. So I originally thought, well, whatever I can get, I'll include those, and then I'll just write about the rest of them. And then when I started, sending out invitations to talk to these people, the response really surprised me at how many people were willing to talk and wanted to talk about these songs. And so at some point I realized, well, why not just only include the songs where I could get fresh interviews, where I could talk to these people instead of just me going. I mean, it could have been that. It could have been just me going on talking about these songs. I guess that would have been okay, but I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. And so at some point I said, okay, once I get enough of those interviews to make up a full-length book, then that's what we're going to go with. So it was me just making lists of songs that I really liked. That was the criteria. It had to be something, there were hits from that decade where maybe they were hits, but they haven't stood the test of time well. I feel like all these songs did stand the test of time pretty well. They're songs that I liked then. They're songs that I like now. And so that's kind of how I came about it. And again, just overwhelmed by the response that I got from these artists that I loved and still do to this day.
It's interesting because you also got the session players, and I know Nancy on our shows we've interviewed a number of people that you just go like, wow, when you start looking at what's in their resume, it's like, oh my gosh, you've played on half of these kind of songs, I remember one of the most iconic ones for me, and people don't recognize him so much, is Howard Tate. He wrote "Get It While You Can" and Janis Joplin covered it, and I remember getting him on the show, and it was really difficult because he didn't understand, and it was going through this friend of his in Wake Forest. Is it Wake Forest, Nikki? Wake Forest. Yep. And he's like, you've got to interview Howard Tate. I'm like, well, who's Howard Tate? And I was like, oh my God. Then I saw the original. I was like, oh my God. And then it wasn't like 2-3 months later he passed away. He was living on the streets.
Yeah.
And then he became a preacher. He these stories, but there's these iconic songs, and it's like, what happened to him? Like Peter Green and people like that, right? It's
right.
These stories.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Yeah, that was kind of the approach I took because there were so many great songs that obviously I couldn't talk to the artists, whether they passed away or just couldn't get in touch with them. But I didn't want to disqualify those songs, and I felt like a lot of times those sort of tangential characters who weren't, the main performer, they gave me some of the best stories in the book because they kind of didn't have a dog in the fight. There was no reason to defend the material or anything like that. They just kind of told it like it was. And, some of the best songs of the 80s, that I was able to include, like Just Like Starting Over by John Lennon or Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, because I was able to talk to these people who were involved in it. So I was really grateful to have had the opportunity because, like you said, a lot of those people have such wonderful stories to tell.
I know, it's so cool. Now, okay, so let's talk about Kim Carnes because Betty Davis Eyes has got to be one of the most iconic. We were talking about this with Nikki at the top of the show. Nikki, when you look, I mean, I thought she changed the world for women in the way she sang. Did you think that, Nikki, as a singer?
Yeah, I do. I mean, because, the 80s, if you look, and I even remember in the 80s, a lot of, even the stuff that I listened to, there wasn't a lot of female artists at that time. It was, I remember 80s hair bands, a lot of, male artists, and if you really go back and look at things, you had Madonna, but, besides, maybe Laura Branigan too, because I think she was 80s as well.
Oh, I remember her, yeah.
Yeah, but and Cyndi Lauper, but mostly everybody, if I go and look at a list of like top 80 songs, it's a lot of men. But Kim Carnes, I mean, she was one. I called it in the beginning of the show. I said Betty Davis Eyes.
I know.
That was like literally almost like the first thing out of my mouth because that was one of the songs, that was key in that era.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, Kim Carnes, she was such a wonderful person to talk to, just so friendly. And what people don't know about that song is it is a cover. Now, Kim Carnes did not write that song. It was written by Jackie DeShannon, who was a big hit maker in the 60s. Put a little love in your heart. I only want to be with you.
Yeah.
And she wrote the song in the 70s, about 1973 or so. And she did a version of it. And if you heard that version and heard Kim Carnes' version, you probably wouldn't think they were the same song. Jackie DeShannon's version was kind of jaunty, had like a saloon-style piano going through it, very kind of old-fashioned feel. And whatever it was, Kim Carnes heard in this song the nucleus of something that could sound modern and sound fresh. And so she took it to her band, and they kind of came up, they came up with that white noise drum sound, and they came up with this cool synthesizer riff, and all of a sudden transforms this song. In the Jackie DeShannon version, it's kind of sounds humble, and then Kim Carnes sings it, and it's such a sexy, sultry song. And she just absolutely heard. I don't know how she did, because like I said, you can go look up this other song, and you won't recognize it basically. But she heard the potential in it, and made it into this thing. I argue in the book that you could argue that either Betty Davis Eyes or Rick Springfield's Jesse's Girl, which I also talk about in the book, they kind of started the 80s music. There were songs in 1980 that were cool and everything, but the 80s sound, I think it started with those two songs, these huge number one hits. So Kim Carnes was just such an important person, really, in the 80s, just influential, and such that unique, great voice. And she was wonderful to talk to, and that song, I mean, that's one of those songs you hear today, and it still sounds modern, it still sounds fresh.
Exactly. I know Nancy and I watched it, and we've watched her perform it over and over and over again, because she's got that sultry look, but also don't mess with me. And Nancy goes, look, she's got David Bowie moves, and she does. She has this kind of like thing with her shoulders when she like turns her back to you and she does a little and then she comes back, like you know what I mean?
There's
like a little Bowie
that like emphasis on one side of the body in a way.
Yeah, in other words,
this is me and that's what I got to say about that.
I'm going to be sultry, but I'm still going to kick butt. Like I'm still like a rocker. Like there's this. She just rides this line, which is so cool. The one song I have to bring this up. The Pina Colada song. Oh, my God. Seriously? Escape. Who knew?
Right? I know. Such a great story. Rupert Holmes, I mean, he was one. I actually did the interview with Rupert via email, and he was kind of writing his memoirs. So I gave him these questions, and he sent me back about 25 pages worth of material. And so I was like, wow, what do I do with all this? And so I kind of poured through it, and he had such amazing insight about this song, and that was interesting because I believe it was the last number one song of the 70s, and then crossed over to be a number one song in the 80s as well. So I felt like I had to include that song. Just a great storyteller song, and of course the twist ending at the end where you find out that these two were placing personal ads, and that they were both, they were in the relationship and they were looking for other people, and they end up meeting each other, of course, kind of a neat twist. And he talked about how, I asked him, I said, is that a happy ending, or is it? And he said, no, there's not really any happy endings in that song, but hopefully they could come to an understanding, and moving forward. So such a cool story and a great song that kind of came off the cuff. He kind of wrote it all in one sitting, as a lot of these songs turned out to be.
Some of the songs are so touching. I mean, you do like, oh my gosh, Miami Vice theme. That's important because Miami Vice was so crucial in regards to music on TV. That's so funny.
I can't tell you how much I loved that show as a kid. I mean, it was just, there are certain songs that I will still hear today that I can tell you the scene in Miami Vice, which they were kind of in. Like that's how I kind of identify those songs. So to talk to Jan Hammer, who did the Miami Vice theme, and he was great, and he talked about how, he met Michael Mann, who is now a famous director, and he was the creator of Miami Vice, and Michael Mann kind of told him what he was doing, what this show was going to be, that he was going to have these kind of cops, and they were vice cops, and this and that. He wanted music to be a big element. And Jan Hammer had already been working on these kind of pieces of music, and he played him the piece of music that was the Miami Vice theme. And Michael Mann heard it. He said, okay, something like that. Work on something like that. And so Michael Mann went back and tried all these different pieces of music, and none of them worked. And they eventually said, let's go back to that first piece that you played me originally, and that was the Miami Vice theme. So a little bit of luck there, and turns out, an instrumental that was one of the biggest hits of the decade.
Seriously, and the white jackets, the white pants. No. See,
yeah.
See, when you think about the 80s,
it's a Pat Boone look.
Oh, stop it! Just stop it! Don't say that again.
I still wear Ray-Ban Wayfarers to this day because of Sonny Crockett. So I mean,
oh my gosh.
I'll tell you that right
that's
now.
Too funny.
No, remember parachute pants? I don't know if you call them parachute pants here. Oh, you do.
That's funny.
I like parachute pants, but then some guys I was dating, I was like, ooh, maybe not.
They were better in theory than they were in practice, perhaps.
It was weird because, like, the clothing, all the different colors and spirals and checkers and whatever was, on your shirts and stuff. It was kind of like the hippies went, like,
crazy.
Hippie went neon.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it and square. Like, it's so interesting how we change, and the big hair. We have the punk era to hit the big hair,
Right.
But,
right.
yeah, there was a whole culture which is all connected to the music. And movies, there's something about 80s movies that it just, you can't redo it. I think it was like the most magical time in movie history was the 80s. And St. Elmo's Fire, you cover that. You've got Eye of the Tiger. I remember my friend, I was talking about my friend Robbie Nicky on your segment earlier. I remember him and some other friends going to the movies and watching Rambo, and that's it, man. We ran up that hill. Like, we ran. There's that music, and I don't know, don't you think, Jim, at that time, like, the music and the movies it changed everything at that point? I know that's always been connected, but there was something different.
Yeah, I do think so. I think music soundtracks were a big part of that decade. You mentioned, we talk about Eye of the Tiger in the book. One of the best stories, that comes out of the book is If You Leave from the Pretty in Pink soundtrack, which an amazing story because, and if people read the book, they can check this out. I talked to Andy McCluskey, who is the lead singer and songwriter of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, OMD for short. And, so they were hired by John Hughes, the famous John Hughes, 16 Candles, all these huge movies in the 80s, to write the theme song for Pretty in Pink, this song that was going to play at the end of the movie and, be the prom song and so on and so forth. And the original plot of the movie had Molly Ringwald's character ending up with her best friend, John Cryer's character, Ducky, in the movie, not Andrew McCarthy. And so OMD writes a song based on this. It was a song called Goddess of Love. And they eventually included it on one of their albums. It's a good song. And so they had it all done. And they think, oh, great, we're going to be in this movie. And then John Hughes comes to them and says, well, look, we tested the movie, and nobody liked that ending. Nobody thought that she should end up with John Cryer, so now she's going to end up with Andrew McCarthy. So you have to write a whole new song, and they had about 2 days to do this. And so under all this pressure, he goes with his band, and they sit down, and they put these chords together, and they come up with this thing, and they come up with If You Leave, which turns out to be, it's still like the prom song to this day. And they did it under all this pressure, by the seat of their pants. Just an amazing performance under those circumstances, and it's still a song, it still gets me every time I listen to it today.
Oh,
well,
man,
sometimes those are like the best songs, though. I mean, because I find that the ones that I write that happen within like the the day or the 15 minutes or the 30 minutes are the ones that everybody remembers, rather than the ones that you spent weeks or years finishing,
crying and bleeding over.
It's an overthinking thing. Because I know when I paint a picture, the ones that I just get her done, paint it, and don't second guess are the ones that sold, as opposed to the ones that, I got to do it this way, and I really studied
You're thinking.
this and that. Yeah, you overthink. And I think when you overthink, then you lose a little bit of that emotional wave that you want to create.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so many of the songs in this book, like Nikki said, they were just kind of written in the heat of the moment, not thought about. Not only that, but they were also songs where the artists didn't think much of their commercial potential. You know what I mean? Like they didn't hear what everybody else heard in these songs.
Funny.
And so that was another thing. I don't know how many artists, I asked, I said, did you think it was going to be a hit? And they all, they would quote kind of the same line. Well, if we knew what was going to be a hit, we'd do it every time. You know what I mean?
That's a new song, If We Knew.
Yeah.
Right.
If we,
I would have bought that house,
Yeah. If we knew. So, so a lot of them were happy accidents and things like that.
The look cracked me up about Roxette because I remember, when we lived in South Africa, we had just come off the road, Nancy and I, traveling for 2.5, 3 years with her art and full time, and we stayed with some friends until we got our feet back on the ground and figured out what we were going to do. And they were all, it's a music family, and one now, Brendan plays with Johnny Clegg, and it turned out really cool with what they were doing in life. But we'd come home from school, and this house would be vibrating, man. It would be like Queen was on, or, it was like loud, and we're loud here. And then I couldn't believe when I heard Roxette, because these guys were like more jazz, blues, Here comes Roxette, and I was like, and they were playing quarters. Remember, Marshall? Yeah. I'm telling on them. Playing, and I was like, you went from that to that, and then Roxette, and it got into under everyone's skin. Roxette did it, and I know Nikki was talking. There wasn't that many women, but Roxette, that was an interesting thing with the male-female thing with them, and how that song "The Look" came out.
Yeah, absolutely. And they go ahead.
Go
Nikki,
ahead. No.
No, after you, please.
No, I was just gonna say. I actually, Roxette was one of the groups that I did listen to in the '80s because of another movie song, "The Pretty in Pink," the song that was at the end of the movie. It Must Have Been Love.
Oh yeah.
That's another, '80s movie song.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So as I was sitting here, listening and thinking, I'm like, I'm actually coming up with, I could smack my own head because I'm like going, oh my God, my idol Pat Benatar was 80s. So I'm sitting here going, okay, how could I forget her? But there's the combination of the male female thing, was interesting in that timeline too, because you would have bands like Fleetwood Mac that would have, that had a blend of male and female, but never, there wasn't really a duo.
Yeah, Roxette was classic. Different,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were, and I talked to Per Gessel, who was the songwriter, and that was an interesting one because normally it was Marie Fredriksson, who was the name of the lead singer, and she was the one who usually took the lead on the vocals, and for The Look, he was just kind of fooling around. English was the second language, and that's why the lyrics and The Look, if you kind of parse through them, they kind of sound kind of funny on the page, but they sound so great within the song. Like those, hitting like a hammer. She's a juvenile scam. It's just he's just kind of going off the top of his head, almost Dylan-esque, really. And it just works so well in that song, and then the production is so dynamic. And then Marie Fredriksson comes on, and she kind of sings the chorus part, and it's just, it was a song that it became, again, a kind of an accidental hit in the United States. There was someone who knew the music, from Sweden. He requested it to a radio station. The radio station started playing it. Everybody loved it. It becomes a huge hit, and they hadn't even really been broken free in the United States yet. So again, an example of one of these kind of accidental hit singles that happened so often in the 80s.
I'm going to do this list again. I'm going to rewatch it all because reading the story is so cool. Everyone's story, and it's like,
it's the chart of the world by music.
Yeah. I really love your books, and I'm so glad to know about what you do and who you are because it's like, wow, you're an excellent writer. What got you started in the world of writing about music and songwriters? Because you get into the song. You're not just, so-and-so did this. You get into, like, the nitty-gritty of the song, which I love.
Yeah, it was something, I started writing. I have a different full-time job, but I was always in broadcasting and writing and things like that. So it was something I started as a hobby, really, just kind of writing for online magazines and things like that, never thinking anything would come of it. And, little by little it grew, and I just, I've always approached it as a fan, it's because that's how I still listen to it. So when I talk to these people or when I write about them, some people talk about like having journalistic distance and being objective, and I really can't do that. I'm passionate about it. It really means a lot to me. And so I think that probably comes through in the writing a lot. And I've always been somebody who was really interested in learning about how songwriters did what they did, because it was something, I always wanted to be one, but I didn't have the talent for it. So, like learning about these singer-songwriters or songwriters, performers, whatever the case may be, that was always something that intrigued me. And so it's something that I've always been drawn to when I write. It's kind of like I want to know how the sausage is made. You know what I mean? Like how they come up with these great lines. How and Nikki, who is a talented singer-songwriter, she knows how to do this. I like to get in their heads and find out how that is. And so that's kind of what this book is about, and it's probably what I'll continue writing about in the future.
Oh, please do, because and I like the way you write, because it's like, reading the 80s, I'm back in my childhood, man, and I just remember, the music parties. I mean, we used to have like just our own, like, houses would vibrate, seriously. And, that's the thing, and I miss those days of crazy, and then when you're reading and you can tell your passion for music, and to me, I love how you said, okay, I'm going to get these interviews, whoever is connected to this song, I want to get that story, because otherwise it's like, let's be Wikipedia. There's a difference in getting that connection. And I thought, this is passion, this is so much fun, and you're reading, like you feel like you're reading something, like you're connecting with your friends, and you go listen to the song, watch it, whatever. But there's a connection, and I think all of us music lovers that are like crazy, especially the geekifies, we get in there and we want to read from someone who. Sorry, I'm calling you a geek, Jim.
I won't disagree with you there, and I thank you. I thank you for saying all that. And what that brings me to is it's so important for me to thank the artists, because without the artists and their participation, and and the producers and the instrumentalists, whoever I talk to, this book wouldn't have been possible. It wouldn't have been what it was. They say never meet your heroes. That's the cliche, right? And yet every one of these people that I talked to, they were so forthcoming and so friendly and open and insightful. And, it just blew me away, to be able to talk to these people that I was a huge fan of as a kid and still am, and to have them be so great. I mean, even if this book doesn't sell a single copy, it would have been worthwhile for having had the chance to talk to them and learn about how they created these amazing songs. So that's really, I just kind of put it together. It's really the artists who deserve the credit for the songs, obviously, and for how this book turned out.
Isn't it funny when you meet someone or you talk to somebody that you've respected and idolized through their creative things that happen, and then you find out they're a person, like
right.
They showed up, man.
Yeah, I have to tell you, the very first interview I got, it was hilarious, because what I did, I sent all these publicists, and again, not thinking, I wasn't sure what kind of response I was going to get. I was thinking, if I get 5 or 10 people, that'd be cool. And so I think the day after I sent my first batch of emails, I was sitting at home, and I got a phone call on my cell phone, and I didn't recognize the number, so I'm thinking immediately, robocall. And so I probably answered, hello, kind of caustically, thinking I'm about to hang up on this person. And the person on the other end of the line said, Jim? And I said, yeah. And he said, this is Dennis DeYoung. And I, of course, the lead singer of Styx. So he had just kind of bypassed the whole, rep, get in touch with me, scheduled the interview. He just called me directly. And we talked about Mr. Roboto for an hour.
Yeah.
And he was,
oh my God,
he was hilarious. And he was, so insightful about it. And he was self-deprecating. And, like right off the bat, then once that happened, then I was like, I'm going after this. This was so great. I want more and more of this. I want to talk to more and more of these people. And so, he was great. We eventually met afterwards. He invited me backstage to one of his shows. So that was really cool. And that's something that happens too. Yeah, it's something that happened too. You know, some of these artists, like I got swag from George Thorogood. I got like a bad to the bone bandana.
George
I mean, like
is the man. He is like the
he's
dude.
The best.
I'm having groupie envy.
I know. And
I'm like, you know, I grew up in the '80s. I mean, and a lot of the songs, you know, inspired me. I mean, like I said, my all-time idol is Pat Benatar. So, you know, and I've been told that I sound like her and like Stevie Nicks. So I'm like sitting here, like just listening. I'm like going, "Oh, you're my new best friend."
we used to cover a Styx song.
Yeah.
Sweet Madam Blue.
Yeah.
When we had our
that's
band.
A good one.
Yeah, it was really cool. And our band, our drummer, that was the song that the drummer and our guitarist had a fight on stage, and that was the song that ended our band.
My goodness.
On stage, and
it ended with the drummer coming down from the drum set, picking up 2 drumsticks, walking over to the guitarist and saying, "I'm going to shove these up your
He watched the commitments. You know he did. That's where he got it from. He watched the commitments.
All we could do is, Lisa and I just kept playing. The audience was laughing. We were like, "Oh, this is great."
Our bass player's on the knees down laughing because that's what he does. Him and Nancy would look at each other. They're both Taurus, and their eyes, they both do eye rolls.
We're like, we could look at her and go, "Here comes shit." And sorry, people, I had to say the word.
And down she goes, down he goes, and I'm standing there like trying to sing over everything. And I lost my voice and lost the band, and then
that was the end of the end.
That sounds like the best behind the music episode ever. I want to see the behind the music on this.
Oh well, how about this? The drummer before turned out to be like not allowed to be around anybody because he was on crack. The rhythm guitarist we found out later was a rapist, and that was why he was on parole.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Oh my goodness!
I know. Trust me, and bands sleep in the same hotel room. Hello, I didn't know, dude. When your musician is on parole, be warned.
And one day, Lisa and I sit down. We're like, it's band or it's
business.
The magazine. Which are we going to choose?
Yeah.
And we went, no, we're doing magazine.
I know, but it's so much fun. And I'm like you, Jim. To me, all this new music too. It's so exciting to hear new music and the independent side. Do you interview independent artists at all?
I do.
Awesome.
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. I talk to heritage artists, and in fact, that's one of the most exciting things for me. It's not just about going back. It's about when I hear somebody, I still get excited as when I was a kid. It's different. Music is very different now. The one thing I talk about with the 80s in terms of the book is, I think in the introduction I talk about, I felt like that was the last era where the best stuff was right in front of you. You didn't really have to look for it too hard for it. It was on the radio, it was on MTV, whatever the case may be. I mean, there was some stuff under the radar as always, but for the most part it was right there. And then it started to splinter in the second half of the decade, and then you from that point you kind of had to look for it, and that's the case today. You kind of have to look for it, but I still, when I hear a great new band, a great new songwriter, I get so excited about it, and I want to tell people about it. And so yeah, I do that. I interview younger artists and independent artists and things like that. And so that's just as much a kick for me as talking to Mark Knopfler or talking to one of these 80s artists. It's a little bit of both.
I agree. I mean, it's just we've run the gamut of the big dudes and then the independents that are to me just as big in what they do. You know what I mean? But Nancy's got a quick question here.
I have this idea that the independent musicians should get together and have an independent music concert on 4th of July. It would be kick.
There you go.
Yeah, go on, Nikki. Come on, you're in charge, Nikki.
Yeah.
I am having a jam in LA when I'm there for the Grammys.
They could do it across the country.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do something on the radio. We'll do something.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, I say, there's still fantastic music out there. You just have to look harder for it. That's the only difference. There's just as much good music now as there was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years. It's just you have to search for it. And it's so it's a blessing and it's a curse for new artists because they have the ability to get it out there, but there's so much of it now, and so for people to find it, it's more difficult. But it's out there. It certainly is.
Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. I would definitely agree because like you said, it's easy to put stuff out, but the environment is saturated, and then you know you also
have to market. You
well,
have to
right.
market.
I mean, yep, and then you also have to compete with, you know, the majors as well, which then becomes you know even more of a challenge. But you know, you can do it. Just keep trying.
You just do it, and that's what with us with what we do, even on shows. I mean, I have to have you fill out forms for us to air your music, you know, because there's it's like this weird. I mean, everything's weird, but just keep going. Just keep going. As we talked at the beginning of the show with Nikki, just keep doing. If you have a passion for it, look at Jim's. I mean, your book has got everyone. You know, the B-52s. That story. I don't want to tell any more of the stories because I want people to buy the book. Go get it. Playing back in the '80s, a decade of unstoppable hits. Jim Beviglia. Did I pronounce your name right, by the way?
It's close. Beviglia. It's Beviglia.
Oh, wow.
You're right on the money. You're right on the money.
Beviglia. Ooh, I like that. I like it.
Yes.
Okay. Jim, what? I mean, I just want to say you got Tom Petty in there. I mean, you've got Madness, Our House in the middle of the street, and you blinded me with science. You got and Rock Me on a Dance. Come on.
Can I tell you I have to tell you the She Blinded Me with Science story because that was a great one. I spoke to Thomas Dolby, and he was fantastic. So brilliant man. I mean, he has gone on to success in making tech products and things like that, and still plays music. But he said so the voice that you hear over and over again, She Blinded Me with Science. That's he was an actual television personality in Great Britain who was also a scientist. His name was Dr. Magnus Pike. I guess he'd kind of be like Bill Nye is, in the United States. He was kind of that kind of person. And so he kind of hired him, Thomas Dolby, just like you would out of central casting, because he had this song. He knew this part. He wanted someone to kind of sing this part. And so this Dr. Magnus Pike comes into the studio and he says, okay, here's what you have to say. And he kept saying it. She blinded me with science as a question almost. And Thomas Dolby had to tell him. He said, well, Dr. Pike, you kind of have to say it as a statement, as like an exclamation. And he said to Thomas Dolby, he said, as a noted scientist, it would be a bit surprising if the girl blinded me with science, and so that's why he was saying it as a question. He couldn't conceive of the fact that that it would be anything but surprise for someone to surprise him with science.
That's funny.
I
like it.
I love it. Jim, we're going to play Spontuneous. Are you ready?
Oh no, I'm terrified, but go ahead.
Okay, we're going to play Spontuneous, but before we do that, what is your toast? What are you happy about?
I'm grateful for my family, my wife, and my daughter Danielle. I'm grateful for Big Blend Magazine for having me on the show. It's been so much fun. And again, I'm grateful to the artists who participated in my book, because without them, it wouldn't have been possible.
Well, you can come on our show anytime.
Wow, that was a
lot
of
fun.
I know. We're ordering another
back.
bottle of champagne. There's a lot of bubbles floating around in this room. But anyway.
Hello?
Okay.
Are you not those types? Okay. I'm just saying. There's no beans going around. Oh, see, I had to say that. Sorry.
Oh, boy.
Well, you can tell now I'm having champagne. Now, Spontuneous The Song Game is really an amazing, fun game. It is a board game, an award-winning and best-selling board game created by Rob Ridgway, and he sent us on a story mission, so we're going to be playing our Rex Allen segment in a little bit here. And Nikki dropped off the call here somehow. Nikki called back in. I don't know where she went. She disappeared. I know. I don't know what happened. But anyways, the song game, Spontuneous, it started with a friend of his. Oh, here she comes.
Okay.
Welcome back to the bubble land, Nikki.
That was just so weird. My line just totally went dead. I have no idea why I did that.
That's what I said. There was bubbles around you and hello, and I thought you meant the other kind of bubble, not the champagne bubble. That's why I said what I said. I didn't realize you were going hello, one ringy dingy. But anyway, Spontuneous The Song Game. It's spontaneous, right? It was someone was singing a song, saying a word. Said to me, let's go to the mountains, and then Rob sang a song over the word mountain, and that's how this board game. And he took out Monopoly. He's taken out everyone on Amazon with this board game.
Man.
He's such a little entrepreneur, and he rocks.
Yeah.
So we're going to play the radio version of Spontuneous. So everyone, you can check it out, songgame.com. I'm going to give each of you a word, and you have to give me 5 lyrics from a song. Okay? You don't have to be a singer. We've got Nikki here. She can take care of that. And that's how we go. So I'm going to have a clock. You have 10 seconds to get it right. And if you do not get it right, I'm going to butt pan you because it's my favorite thing to do.
Oh, boy.
So I'm going to start with Nancy. So
why me?
Because
I know.
That's how it works. So Nancy, your word is eye. E-Y-E, like an eyeball. Eye.
E-Y-E, eye.
Yes.
Oh, the brown-eyed girl. Oh my God, my brown-eyed girl. Uh-oh. Okay, Eye of the Tiger. No.
No.
What do you need?
5 words. You get to be butt panned.
You confuse me.
Okay. She's my brown-eyed girl. Sha la 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 la. That's all you needed to do.
Okay, go ahead, butt pan me.
I love butt panning my mother.
And now a butt pan moment. Butt pan. Butt pan. Butt pan. Butt pan. Butt pan. You're a butt pan.
Surf's up.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I feel so much better. Oh, I love that. Nikki, are you ready?
Sure.
You've done this before. I
know, and I stink at this game.
No, you're fine. Okay. So your word is heart, like the doof 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 organ in your body. Heart.
Come on, that's like too easy.
Okay, take it.
Put the clock on.
Oh, let's see. It's not too easy.
You have a song, Heartbeat.
I know I have a song called Heartbeat, but I didn't want to sing my own song. I was trying to sing somebody else's song.
Seriously, you're going to make me push the butt pan thing again?
Yeah, you can push
and
the
now a butt pan moment. Butt pan. Butt pan. Butt pan. Butt pan. Butt pan. You're a butt pan.
See, that's what happens when you say it's easy.
I know, see? I think at this game.
Are you ready, Jim?
I am, and I'm terrified, but go ahead.
Oh, no, you're going to be just fine. Okay, so Jim, no butt panning allowed. This needs to stop. So third time lucky here. So your word is breath.
Breath? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep it in the 80s with a song that's in the book. Every breath you take, every step, every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you.
Right
awesome.
on. You won. Yay. Yay. And did you see Sting perform that with Bruce Springsteen?
I did, yeah. And like I said, it's in the book. I talked to Hugh Padgham, who was the producer, and told me how it even didn't make that album because the band could not get along with each other. They were so at odds at the time that they thought of not even doing the album. So yeah. Wow. So not only did I win, but I tied it into the book. So I think I should get something extra for that.
Okay, we'll send you a bottle of champagne, courtesy of a champagne sponsor called Bubble.
It'll be empty, but we'll send you the bottle.
No, good stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, Jim. It's been a true pleasure. Please come back as you do more books, right? You have another one you're working.
Yeah, I'm more. It's just in the starting process of another one, but I'll be glad to come on anytime. Thank you so much for having me, Nancy, Lisa, Nikki. Thank you so much. And everyone, again, if you haven't guessed, the book is about the 80s. Rock Me Amadeus. Yes. Okay, it's on there. It's Jim Beviglia. Now I can't do it. Say your last name for me. Do that whole Beviglia.
Beviglia. Yes. It's a place in just off the coast of Italy.
Yeah.
With condos.
With condos. Okay. Everybody, it's playing back the 80s, a decade of unstoppable hits on Amazon, all those places. Barnes & Noble, go get it. And also go to Jim's blog, countdownkid.wordpress.com. Thanks so much, and you have a good rest of your Sunday.
You too. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bye, Jim.
Bye-bye. Bye.